thin veil of morning fog curled around the headstones as the cemetery gates groaned open. Dew clung to the grass like trembling jewels, catching the pale light of dawn. Michael Hartley stepped through them slowly, each footfall heavy, deliberate, as if the ground itself remembered his grief. His tailored coat did nothing against the chill settling into his bones. Ahead, the marble angel marking his daughter Lily's grave seemed to glow, her outstretched wings forever frozen in a gesture he wished he could feel again. He hadn't been here in months, maybe years. Time blurred when guilt lived inside you. Before he reached the grave, he stopped because someone was already there. A janitor, still in his dark green uniform, knelt before the headstone. His shoulders shook with quiet sobs, one hand clutching the small fingers of a child standing beside him. The girl, a little thing, maybe 6, held a wilted bouquet pressed against her chest. She looked scared, as if grief was something she hadn't yet learned to carry. Michael felt his breath lock in his throat. What were they doing at her grave? He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Before we go deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It still amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city below. Let's see how widely kindness echoes across the world. The little girl noticed Michael first. She tugged gently at the janitor's sleeve, whispering something he couldn't hear. The man lifted his head, red-rimmed eyes widening when he recognized who was standing there. "Mr. Hartley," he breathed, scrambling to stand. His voice cracked. I didn't expect anyone else this early." Michael studied him silently. He vaguely knew this man, Elias, one of the building custodians at Hartley Enterprises. They had never spoken beyond brief nods in hallways, the kind of distant acknowledgement reserved for people whose worlds rarely touched. But now, here he was, crying at Lily's grave as if she had been part of his own story. Michael's stomach tightened. "Why are you here?" he asked softly, though it came out rougher than he intended. Elias swallowed hard. "It's complicated, sir." The little girl peeked out from behind him. Her brown eyes were swollen from crying, her nose pink. She held the wilted bouquet out as if offering proof she belonged there. "We bring flowers to her," she whispered. Michael blinked. His heart felt like it stalled for a moment. "To Lily?" The girl nodded. His pulse hammered louder. "Why would you do that?" Elias placed a gentle hand on the child's hair. "Grace, sweetie, wait by the tree a moment." She hesitated, then obeyed, walking toward a nearby oak and hugging the bouquet like it meant more than he could ever know. When she was out of earshot, Elias let out a long, trembling breath. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said. Not suddenly, not without a chance to explain. Michael's patience thinned, not with anger but with fear. "Explain what?"
For the little one.
"That your daughter, she helped us," Elias murmured. "More than you ever knew." The words felt like a hand closing around Michael's ribs. He sank onto the bench near the grave, unable to stand. His daughter's smile flashed in his memory, bright, warm, always offering pieces of herself to others. But he never imagined she had reached into the life of a man whose name he barely knew. "How?" Michael forced out, "Tell me everything." Elias hesitated, glancing toward his daughter under the oak. "She used to visit the school where I worked before I took the janitor job at your company. Your daughter, she'd sit with Grace during recess. Grace didn't have friends back then. Kids teased her because she stuttered." Michael swallowed, throat burning. "Lily would bring her extra snacks," Elias continued. "She'd braid her hair. She'd draw pictures with her. She even read stories to her when Grace had bad days. My daughter adored her. She still does." The world felt like it shifted under Michael's feet. He stared at Lily's name etched in stone, his vision blurring. He had known his daughter was kind. He never knew she had been someone's safe place. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Michael whispered. Elias looked down, shame flickering in his expression. "Because when she passed, you shut everyone out. I didn't want to intrude on a father's grief. But Grace kept asking to visit. She said Lily made her feel brave. So sometimes before school we'd come here, quietly, so we wouldn't disturb you." Michael rubbed his face with shaking hands. The weight of missed moments, misunderstanding crushed him. "My daughter helped your little girl," he murmured. "I never knew." Elias nodded, tears gathering again. "She changed her life, sir. Lily, she saved her from loneliness." Michael's chest tightened, sharp enough to feel like a wound reopening. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure how to breathe. Grace wanted to bring her flowers today. Elias added softly, "Because it's the anniversary." Michael's breath hitched. He knew what anniversary it was. How could he ever forget? He turned toward the oak tree, watching the small girl hugging wilted flowers. And something inside him, something long buried, shifted. A faint flicker of warmth, painful but alive. As the wind rustled through the cemetery, Michael felt a strange pull toward the child who cherished the memory of the daughter he had failed to protect. He stood slowly, ready to walk toward her, when Elias spoke again, voice gentler, almost apologetic. "She misses her," he said, "more than you believe." Michael closed his eyes, letting the ache settle. Then he stepped toward Grace, just as the air changed, and another memory of Lily surfaced, one he wasn't ready to face yet. And that was only the beginning of what he was about to learn. If you were standing there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, tap like to show that compassion still matters. Michael walked toward the oak tree with steps that felt too fragile for a man who'd built empires. Grace looked up when his shadow stretched across the grass, and for a moment she froze, gripping the bouquet as if it were a shield. He crouched slowly, lowering himself to her eye level. "Hi," he said softly, unsure how to begin. "Those are beautiful flowers." Grace's fingers tightened around the stems. "They're for Lily," she whispered. "I picked them myself, even though they're not perfect." Something in Michael cracked gently. "Lily loved imperfect things," he said. She said they reminded her that everything deserves a chance. Grace's face brightened just a little, and she glanced toward the grave as if expecting to see Lily's ghost smiling back. "Did you really know her?" Michael asked. Grace nodded earnestly. "She was my favorite person. She told me stories about skies that never end. She said people shine in different ways." Her voice wavered. "And she told me not to hide my voice just because it shakes." Michael swallowed hard. Lily would say something like that. She'd had a way of finding broken pieces in people and stitching them together with simple kindness. "Do you still hide your voice?" he asked gently. Grace looked down. "Sometimes." A faint, sad warmth tugged at him. "Well, I'm glad you brought her flowers today. She would have loved that." The little girl shifted her weight, studying him with an expression too perceptive for her age. "You're her dad, right?" He hesitated. Not from doubt, but from the sudden flood of memories he wasn't ready to handle. "Yes," he finally said. "I'm her dad." Grace's chin trembled. "I'm sorry she's gone." He closed his eyes, and the words hit him like a quiet storm. "Me too." Behind them, Elias stood a few feet away, hands clasped nervously. Michael gestured for him to join, and Elias approached cautiously. "I didn't expect you'd be kind to us after finding us here," Elias murmured. Michael shook his head. "You love my daughter in your own way, and she cared for yours. There's no reason for anger." Elias's eyes glistened with relief. "I wish you knew how much she meant to Grace. Lily made her believe she wasn't alone." Michael exhaled shakily. "She made me believe that too, once." Elias looked at him, sympathy softening his features. "She was special, sir, more than most." Grace tugged at her father's sleeve again. Can we give the flowers now?" Michael nodded. "Let's do it together." The three of them walked to Lily's grave. Grace knelt first, placing the bouquet gently at the foot of the angel statue. Her small hand brushed the marble like she was greeting an old friend. Michael knelt beside her, fingers tracing Lily's name. Elias stayed standing, hands trembling as if he was afraid to touch something sacred. The silence around them thickened, but not in a frightening way. More like a soft blanket wrapping three fragile hearts. "Lily used to tell me jokes," Grace suddenly whispered. Even when I didn't laugh right away, she waited. A faint smile played at the corner of Michael's mouth. His daughter always had time for people. Always. Did she ever tell you the one about the sunflower who thought it was a star? He asked gently. Grace's eyes widened. Yes. She said the sunflower kept lifting its face to the sky because it believed light belonged to everyone. Michael's voice almost broke. She used to tell me that story too. Grace reached out and touched his sleeve in a brave little gesture. I miss her. He covered her hand with his own. I do too, sweetheart. Elias wiped at his eyes, turning away for a moment. Sir, I didn't bring Grace here to reopen your grief. I swear. She insists on honoring Lily because Lily gave her courage. Michael took a slow breath. You don't need to apologize for loving someone my daughter loved. A quiet tension slowly eased among them. Not gone, but shifting into something gentler. Grace rose to her feet and stepped a few paces back, letting the adult speak. She twirled a blade of grass in her fingers, staring at the angel statue as if deep in conversation with a memory. Elias looked exhausted, sorrow clinging to his posture. I've tried to teach Grace to be strong, he said, but Lily made her feel safe in ways I couldn't. You're doing more than you think, Michael replied. Elias shook his head. Not enough. Not with everything we've been through. Michael noticed the way Elias said we, a protective togetherness, a unit weathering storms unseen. What happened? Michael asked quietly. Elias blinked, startled by the question. It's a long story, sir. I have time. Elias hesitated, glancing again toward Grace, who was humming softly now, kneeling to untangle a dandelion from the grass. My wife left, he finally said, 2 years ago. She couldn't handle raising a child with special needs. Grace's stutter frustrated her, so she walked out and never looked back. Michael felt the weight of those words settle like cold stones. She abandoned both of you, he murmured. Elias nodded. I work 2 jobs now. Janitor by day, school custodian at night. I try to give Grace everything I can. But some days it feels like the world is too heavy. Michael's heart clenched. He understood the helplessness of watching someone you love suffer and not knowing how to fix it. Lily stepped in during the hardest moments, Elias added. I never even asked her to. She just saw Grace. Really saw her. Michael closed his eyes briefly, letting the bittersweet ache rise. His daughter had carried empathy like a lantern, bright enough to guide others, even while her own father stumbled in darkness. Elias, Michael said gently, would you tell me more about how they met, how Lily helped her? Elias inhaled shakily. If you really want to know, yes, I will. As he prepared to speak, Michael glanced at Grace again, the small child whose life Lily had touched so deeply, whose pain and innocence were tied to his daughter's memory in ways he never imagined. And for the first time in years, Michael wanted to understand, to listen, to feel connected to Lily again, even through someone else's story. Have you ever had someone step into your life when you needed them most? Right? Yes, and share their name. Gratitude travels farther than we think. Elias drew in a slow, steadying breath, the kind a person takes before reopening an old wound. Michael remained quiet beside him, hands loosely clasped, eyes fixed on the little girl who had become an unexpected thread connecting him back to Lily. It started on a rainy Tuesday, Elias said. Grace was in 2nd grade. Kids were running wild inside because outdoor recess got canceled. She was sitting alone in a corner, holding her lunchbox the way some kids hold a life raft. Michael pictured it instantly. The noise, the fluorescent lights, a small girl shrinking into herself. She never talked much back then, Elias continued. Anytime she tried, the stutter made kids laugh. Teachers meant well, but they had 30 other kids to manage. She just faded into the background. He paused, running a hand over his face. And then Lily walked in. Michael stiffened slightly, hearing her name spoken with such vividness. She was there helping the reading program. Elias said, just volunteering. She spotted Grace immediately, kneeled down beside her, asked what she was eating. Grace was so startled she couldn't speak. But Lily didn't flinch. She just sat there, like silence was something she could speak fluently. A soft smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Sad, nostalgic. 5 minutes later, she convinced Grace to show her the drawings in her lunchbox. My daughter draws everything. Cats, clouds, superheroes, even broken things she tries to fix with crayons. Michael felt warmth stir in his chest. Lily used to fix her stuffed animals the same way. Clumsy stitches, hearts drawn on bandages. From that day, Elias said, Lily never let her sit alone again. He exhaled, shaking his head as if marveling at the memory. She invited Grace to join the activity tables, sat with her during assemblies. Once, she even stood up to a group of kids who made fun of Grace's stutter. Michael felt that line like a spark. She stood up for her? Oh, yes, Elias murmured. Your daughter had a backbone as bright as her smile. She didn't raise her voice. Even then she spoke softly, but with this warmth that made kids listen. The breeze rustled through the trees, carrying echoes of a girl whose kindness lingered long after she was gone. Grace came home that week talking about Lily nonstop, Elias said, and for the first time in months, she wasn't crying after school. Michael lowered his head, swallowing a knot of grief. She saved pieces of people without ever telling anyone, he whispered. Not even me. Elias hesitated, then spoke carefully. Sir, parents never know everything their children do. Sometimes their goodness blooms quietly, where adults never look. Michael's eyes stung. He wished he had looked more. A few feet away, Grace plucked 3 tiny wildflowers poking through the grass. She arranged them beside Lily's grave like she was adding finishing touches to a gift. Michael watched her with softened gaze. She really loved Lily. She did, Elias said, still does. That kind of kindness that sticks to a child heart. A silence settled again, gentle, thoughtful. But Michael wasn't done asking. You said things have been hard, he murmured. Besides your wife leaving, is there something else going on? Elias looked down. His jaw tightened. Grace's school recommended a speech therapist, but I can't afford the sessions on my salary. I've been saving, working extra shifts, but it's slow. Too slow. Michael felt a tug inside him. One part empathy. Another part something deeper, something that felt like Lily brushing against the edges of his choices. He didn't speak yet. He let the weight of the moment breathe. Elias continued quietly. Sometimes I worry her voice will disappear entirely. Kids can lose confidence so fast. And Lily was the only person who made her feel brave. Michael exhaled slowly, the emotion building in his chest like a rising tide. He wanted to say something, to offer help, but his throat felt locked. Then Grace's small voice carried through the air. Daddy, she called softly. Can we come back every year? For Lily? Elias blinked rapidly, his voice trembling when he answered. Yes, sweet girl, as long as you want. Michael felt something move in him. A shift, a thaw, a gentle cracking of walls he'd built around his grief. And somewhere between Grace's innocence and Elias's exhaustion, he felt the faint beginnings of a path. One Lily had unknowingly left behind for him to walk. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might be the spark someone needs tonight. Elias took another breath, ready to reveal something he had been holding back, the part of the story that would change how Michael saw everything. And as he opened his mouth to continue, the air around them shifted again, like a curtain being slowly drawn open. Elias's eyes shifted toward the grave, then toward his daughter, then finally back to Michael, as though he were bracing himself to expose a truth that had lived buried too long. There's something else, he said quietly. Something I never told you, because I didn't know how. Michael straightened slightly, sensing the tremor in Elias's voice. Go on. Elias swallowed hard. The day she passed, his voice cracked and he paused, rubbing the back of his neck. She wasn't on her usual route home from school. She was somewhere else. Somewhere she chose to be. Michael felt his pulse slow into a heavy, cautious rhythm. Where was she? Elias exhaled shakily, the words trembling on the edge of confession. With Grace. The world seemed to stop for a moment, birds stilling in the trees, wind holding its breath. Michael blinked. With Grace? He repeated, stunned. Elias nodded. I never told anyone, not even the police. I didn't want Grace dragged into the investigation. I didn't want her to be blamed. Michael's body went still. What happened? Elias knelt down beside the grave, his hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. Grace had a panic attack after school that day. The teasing was worse than usual. She was shaking, couldn't breathe. And Lily, your daughter, stayed with her. She refused to leave until Grace calmed down. Michael's throat constricted. She walked her all the way to my workplace. Elias continued, held her hand the whole time. Grace told me later that Lily said, no storm lasts forever. We just walked through it together. Michael bowed his head, eyes burning. After I thanked her, Elias said, voice barely above a whisper, I told her to go home quickly before the rain started. I didn't know. I never imagined. His voice collapsed under the weight of guilt he had carried alone. Michael shut his eyes. The accident, the storm, his daughter walking alone. He had replayed those moments 1,000 times, but not like this, never with this missing piece. Grace approached him slowly, drawn in by the tension she could feel even if she didn't understand it. Daddy? She murmured, reaching for Elias's hand. Elias gathered her close, kissing the top of her head. It's okay, sweetheart. Michael stared at them, grief twisting into something deeper, heavier, but not directed at them, at himself. Lily had spent her final hours helping someone else. She had died because she stayed to comfort a little girl who needed her. She had been alone because he hadn't known where she was. He hadn't paid attention to her schedule, her routines, her friends. He'd been buried in meetings, numbers, deals. He had failed to protect her, not because of fate, but because he had not been present. A tremor ran through his hands. Grace looked up at him gently. Lily didn't leave me, she whispered. She made sure I wasn't scared. Tears slipped down Michael's cheeks before he could catch them. He rarely cried. Grief had hardened into something unbreakable long ago, but this truth shattered what remained of that shell. Thank you, he whispered to the small girl, for telling me. Grace stepped closer, hesitant, then wrapped her arms around him in a soft, brave hug. Michael froze, then slowly, painfully, returned the embrace. Her small body shook against him. Don't be sad, she whispered. Lily didn't want sad things. Michael let out a quiet, broken laugh through his tears. No, she didn't. Elias watched, his own eyes glistening, torn between relief and sorrow. I didn't want you to blame her, he said softly. She tried to protect my daughter. She didn't deserve to carry my guilt. Michael shook his head. There is nothing to forgive. She was exactly who she was meant to be. The three of them stood there, bound by grief, love, guilt, memory, like threads pulled from the same fraying tapestry. And just when the silence felt unbearably full, Michael whispered the words he'd been terrified to speak aloud. She died helping someone, and I wasn't even there to know. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. Your daughter was a light, Mr. Hartley, and light doesn't ask permission to shine. The statement pierced through him, painful, comforting, true. If that moment struck something deep in you, leave a red heart. Sometimes a single symbol says what our hearts can't. Michael exhaled shakily, wiping tears from his face. Grace slipped her small hand into his, as if guiding him somewhere he didn't yet understand. And Elias, gathering his courage, prepared to reveal the next truth, one that would alter everything Michael believed about himself, about Lily, and about the life he'd been running from. Elias hesitated, studying Michael with the look of a man trying to decide whether the truth would heal or shatter, but knowing it had to be spoken either way. Sir, he began, voice low, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. Something Lily tried to tell you herself. Michael stiffened. What do you mean? Elias looked toward the sky, as if searching for the courage to continue. Your daughter, she talked about you. A lot, more than you think. Michael's breath stalled. About me? Yes, Elias said. She admired you, even when you were too busy. Even when you missed her recitals, or forgot you promised to have lunch with her, or cancel weekend plans last minute. He said it gently, not as a weapon, but as truth. Michael flinched at each memory. Each failure he had conveniently filed away under work obligations. She didn't blame you, Elias added softly. Not once. Grace moved closer to Michael's side, watching with a pure, quiet empathy only children possess. He placed a trembling hand on his knee to steady himself. What did she say? He asked, voice barely audible. Elias took a slow breath. She said you carried the world, so she didn't have to. She said you worked because you loved her. She said she wished you didn't have to be so strong all the time. Michael looked away sharply, jaw tightening as a surge of grief hit him. Raw, unforgiving. But, Elias continued gently, she also worried about you. She told me once that she wished you let someone help you the way you help everyone else. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. Grace's hand found his again, a small, warm anchor. Lily wanted you to smile more, she whispered shyly. The words hit him harder than anything Elias had said. He swallowed, blinking back tears. I didn't know she talked to anyone about me. Oh, she did, Elias said, a faint smile softening his sorrow. Your daughter had an open heart. She shared what she carried, good and bad, and she wanted you to be happy. Michael stared at Lily's name carved into marble. A tremor rippled through him. Not from grief alone, but from the dawning realization that he had misunderstood his own daughter. He had spent years believing she'd grown distant from him, when in truth, she had been reaching while he was too busy to see it. She never stopped loving you, Elias whispered. Not even for a second. The wind stirred the trees, scattering a few dry leaves across the ground like fragile reminders that everything precious passes, yet leaves traces behind. Michael clenched his jaw to steady himself. Elias, he said quietly, I don't know how to live with what I failed to give her. Elias shook his head firmly. No, don't say that. You gave her a home, safety, a future she dreamed of. You gave her love. Michael muttered, not enough. You can't measure love in hours spent, Elias replied gently. Only in the way a child speaks your name when you're not listening. Michael felt something inside him collapse, not in destruction, but in surrender. The truth had been waiting for years, and now it poured into him like cold water, washing away denial. He lowered his forehead to his hand, breath shuddering. Grace stepped closer, resting her small hand on his shoulder. He didn't push her away. Sir, Elias said quietly, I didn't tell you all this to hurt you. I told you because Lily wanted you to know. She wanted you to stop carrying guilt like it was punishment. Michael looked up slowly, eyes burning. How do you know what she wanted? Elias met his gaze steadily. Because she told me she was proud of you, and that she wished you forgive yourself the way you forgive everyone else. Michael's breath trembled. Forgiveness. A word that felt impossibly heavy. For years, he had believed grief was something to endure alone, an endless penance carved into his days. But now, hearing Lily's kindness reflected back to him through the people she'd touched, he felt the faintest shift inside. A small, hesitant thaw. Grace tugged his hand again. Lily wouldn't want you to be sad forever, she whispered. She said sadness is like a puddle. You step in, but you don't stay. A broken laugh escaped him, half sob, half relief. She actually said that? Grace nodded with certainty. Michael looked away, blinking rapidly to hold back the next wave of emotion. But it was coming. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if your heart could open, or never, if the wound would be too deep. Elias sat back on his heels, as though preparing to reveal the final piece. One last truth that would push Michael toward crossroads he didn't yet know he was approaching. And as the air stilled once more, Michael braced himself, because he could sense it. The story wasn't done with him yet. The cemetery grew quieter as the sun climbed, its gentle warmth stretching across the gravestones like a hand offering comfort. Michael breathed slowly, trying to steady the storm inside him. Every word Elias had spoken lingered, reshaping memories he thought he understood. But Elias wasn't finished. He shifted his weight, looking suddenly unsure. Sir, there's something else I haven't told you. His voice trembled. Something I only learned after Lily passed. Michael tensed. What is it? Elias glanced at Grace, then back at him. Lily wasn't just helping Grace. She was helping me too. Michael frowned softly. Helping you how? Elias rubbed his palms together, nervous. During those months after my wife left, I was falling apart. I tried to stay strong for Grace, but I was drowning. 2 jobs, no sleep, bills piling up. Some nights I didn't know how I keep going. Michael listened carefully, the heaviness in Elias's voice drawing him in. I never told anyone, Elias continued, not even Grace. But one night, I stayed late at the school, just sitting in an empty classroom, staring at the wall. I felt like a failure. And Lily, she happened to walk by. Michael's breath hitched. She found you? Elias nodded, eyes glistening. She saw me crying. I tried to pretend I was fine, but she saw through it. Kids like her, they sense things adults hide. Michael's chest tightened. He remembered how Lily would always notice the smallest emotional shift, how she'd sit beside him quietly when he was overwhelmed. She had carried empathy like a second heart. What did she do? He asked. Elias smiled faintly at the memory. She sat down next to me and said, "It's okay to break, Mr. Elias. Broken things can still shine." He let out a breathy laugh. Imagine hearing that from a 13-year-old. Michael swallowed hard, throat burning. He could hear Lily's voice in those words, soft, steady, wiser than her years. She told me. Elias went on, that Grace needed a hero who didn't give up, and that heroes weren't perfect. They were just people who tried again. Michael's vision blurred slightly. His daughter had been out there holding up other people, while he was losing himself in conference calls and boardrooms. I don't know how, Elias whispered, but she made me believe I could keep going. She gave me a reason to try again the next morning. A long silence stretched between them, heavy but healing. Michael looked at the grave, then at Elias. She helped you, while I never even noticed how heavy her world was. His voice cracked open. Elias reached out cautiously, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. Sir, children don't always tell their parents everything because they don't want to burden them. Lily didn't see you as someone who ignored her. She saw you as someone carrying too much already. She loved you that deeply. Michael closed his eyes. That truth pierced deeper than any knife. Grace sat beside him again, leaning her small body against his arm. Lily said you were her favorite person, she whispered. He inhaled sharply. She told you that? Grace nodded. She said her dad was a big, busy hero. She paused. Not the kind with capes. The kind who works hard to make people safe. Michael pressed a trembling hand to his forehead as tears finally escaped. I didn't know she thought that. Grace laid her head gently on his arm. She did. Elias wiped his eyes. Sir, Lily didn't die angry at you. She died loving you. Michael bent forward, his shoulders shaking. Not in loud sobs, but in the silent collapse of a man who had carried too much guilt for too many years. Grace wrapped both arms around him in a tight, earnest hug, small but unshakably sincere. He held her back, as if holding on to Lily's memory through the embrace of the child she had protected. After a long moment, Michael lifted his head, breathing unsteadily. Thank you, he whispered to both of them, for letting me see her the way you did. Elias nodded. She changed our lives, sir. You should know how much good she left behind. Michael looked at the grave again, softer now, touched by a tenderness he hadn't felt since she was alive. Maybe, he murmured, voice fragile, maybe it's time I stop grieving what I lost and start honoring what she gave. Grace smiled up at him, a small, hopeful smile that brightened the weight in the air. And for the first time in years, Michael felt something stir inside him. Not relief, not closure, but hope, a quiet, trembling hope that maybe he could step out of the darkness he'd been trapped in. If you believe love still finds a way to win, comment, amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Someone scrolling by might need to feel it today. Michael inhaled deeply, ready, almost ready, for the next truth Elias had been holding back. The one that would shift everything again and push them toward a decision none of them could ignore. A quiet stillness settled over the cemetery, the kind that comes just before a revelation. Michael straightened slowly, wiping the last of his tears with the back of his sleeve. Grace kept her small hand wrapped around his fingers, as though she sensed he still needed grounding. Elias watched him for a moment, drawing strength from the sight before he finally spoke again. "Sir, there's one more thing I need to say." His voice trembled, but it carried a firmness underneath. "And I've been afraid to tell you." Michael turned to him. "After everything you've already shared, what could possibly be left?" Elias took a shaky breath. "Something Lily left behind." Michael froze. "Left behind? What do you mean?" Elias reached into his jacket pocket. Not hurriedly, but gently, as if the object inside were fragile. He pulled out a small, worn notebook with soft blue edges. The kind Lily used to doodle in. The kind she carried everywhere. Michael's heart lurched painfully. "Where did you get that?" Elias held it with reverence. "Grace found it the day after her funeral. It must have fallen from Lily's backpack when she walked with her. We didn't know what to do with it. Grace kept it safe, waiting for a day when you'd be strong enough to hold it." Grace stepped forward, offering the notebook to Michael with two small hands. "We didn't read everything," she whispered shyly. But we saw one page. And Daddy said it belonged to your heart, not ours." Michael took the notebook cautiously, as if the paper might crumble beneath his touch. The moment his fingers brushed the cover, a shiver ran through him. Part grief, part memory, part fragile hope. He opened it slowly. Inside were doodles of stars, flowers, crooked stick figures. But one page, folded at the corner, caught his eye. He unfolded it with trembling hands. There, written in Lily's looping handwriting, were the words, "When I grow up, I want to help people who feel alone. Dad says building things changes a world, but I think healing people changes it too. Maybe we can build something together one day." Michael's breath left him in a single, trembling exhale. Elias spoke softly. "She dreamed big, sir, and she believed you'd be part of that dream." Michael pressed the booklet against his chest, bowing his head as emotion threatened to overwhelm him again. "God, Lily," he whispered. "I didn't know." Grace leaned against him gently, small arms encircling his side. "She wanted to help people, just like my dad tries to." Michael looked at Elias, really looked at him, not as an employee, but as a father, a man fighting through life with love as his only armor. "What did you want to tell me about this notebook?" he asked quietly. Elias hesitated, then said, "There's something on the back page, something she wrote for you." Michael flipped to the back. There, in soft pencil strokes, barely pressed into the page, were the words, "Dad, when the world hurts you, don't hide. Find one person to help. It will help you too." A sound escaped him, not quite a sob, not quite a breath. Something raw and human and breaking open. He lowered the notebook, eyes burning. "She left me a path," he murmured, "even after she was gone." Elias nodded. "Yes, sir, she did." Grace tugged at the notebook softly. Maybe you can still do her dream?" Michael looked down at her. Innocence, hope, belief shining through those gentle brown eyes. His heart clenched. "Do you think so?" Grace nodded with certainty. "Lily said helping people makes you less sad. Maybe helping me and Daddy can help you too." Michael inhaled deeply, the weight of her words sinking in. The truth was simple but powerful. Lily had touched his family deeply, and through them, he could continue what she started. "What if," he said slowly, "what if I help you get Grace the support she needs? The speech therapy? The things you've been struggling to afford?" Elias's eyes widened, breath catching. "Sir, I didn't tell you any of this to ask for help." "I know," Michael said gently, "but Lily would have helped, and I want to honor that." Elias's voice broke. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Michael interrupted softly. "It's partnership. It's building something together, just like Lily wrote." Elias swallowed hard, overcome by emotion. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Michael murmured. "Just let me help." Grace stared up at him with wonder. "Does this mean I can talk better someday?" Michael knelt to her level, brushing a strand of hair gently from her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. It means you won't have to face this alone. Grace smiled, a small, trembling smile that carried the spark of a future Lily would have fought for. The sun broke through the clouds and warm light spilling over them, soft, golden, transforming the cemetery into something gentle instead of sorrowful. For the first time in years, Michael felt Lily's presence not as loss, but as guidance. If this moment gives you even a little hope, right, I believe someone out there might need to see your courage today. Elias looked at Michael with a new expression, respect, gratitude, and something else. Something like the beginning of healing. And before the moment could fully settle, Grace tugged Michael's sleeve again. "There's one more thing I want to show you," she whispered. Michael blinked, surprised. "What is it?" Grace reached into her tiny backpack. What she pulled out would change everything. Grace carefully unzipped the small pink backpack she'd been carrying, its zipper decorated with a chipped butterfly charm. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, edges soft from being opened and closed many times. She held it with both hands, like it was something precious. "I kept this safe because Lily told me to," she whispered. Michael's heartbeat slowed, heavy with anticipation. "What is it, sweetheart?" Grace stepped closer and placed the page in his hands. Her small fingers shook. Elias rested a steadying hand on her shoulder, but his eyes were fixed on the paper too. He knew what it was. Michael unfolded it gently. Inside was a drawing. Crayon lines, bright colors, messy in a way children's art always is, but unmistakably filled with meaning. 3 figures stood under a sky full of stars. A tall man, a little girl, and Lily, drawn with a halo of golden hair, and a smile wide enough to light the page. Above their heads, in Lily's handwriting, were the words, "A family doesn't need to match. A family just needs love." Michael inhaled sharply, breath trembling. The world around him seemed to tilt. Grief, love, wonder, and something deeper weaving through him all at once. "She drew this," he whispered. Grace nodded. She said someday we'd all help each other, because families that choose each other are strong. Michael pressed the drawing to his chest, eyes closing. He had never imagined Lily thinking about family beyond the one she was born into. But here she was, believing he had room in his heart for more love, more connection, more healing than he'd ever allowed himself. He looked up at Elias, voice unsteady. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" Elias swallowed, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Because I didn't know if it was my place. You were grieving. I didn't want to add to your pain. And honestly, I didn't think you'd want anything to do with us." Michael shook his head slowly. "She wanted us connected. She saw something we didn't." Grace reached out and touched his wrist gently. "She said you were lonely too." He froze. Lonely. A word he had never said aloud, not even to himself. But Lily had always seen him clearly, even in the moments he hid behind boardrooms and schedules. He lowered himself to his knees, so he was level with Grace. "Sweetheart, thank you for keeping this safe. Thank you for giving it to me." Grace threw her small arms around his neck without hesitation. "Lily wanted you to have it," she whispered. Michael held her tightly, the drawing pressed between them like a bridge connecting past and future. When he finally pulled back, his eyes found Elias, who looked overwhelmed, touched, unsure. Michael stood and extended a hand. "Elias, let me help you and Grace. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because Lily believed we were meant to." Elias stared at Michael's hand, hesitating for only a heartbeat before taking it with both his own, gripping tightly. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Michael said softly. "By loving my daughter when I wasn't there." The words settled over them like a blessing. A soft breeze rustled the trees, carrying the scent of grass and the faint warmth of sunlight breaking through. It felt like Lily was there, smiling, approving, guiding. Grace stepped between the two men, holding on to both of their hands. "Can we come visit Lily together?" she asked. Michael nodded, eyes soft. "As often as you like." "And maybe," Grace said shyly, "maybe you can come to my school one day?" "Lily said you could fix anything. Maybe you can help fix my voice too." Michael's chest tightened with emotion. I'll do everything I can, sweetheart. Elias wiped at his eyes, unable to hide the tears anymore. This moment, this fragile, unexpected beginning, was something none of them could have predicted. Michael looked again at Lily's grave, not with the old heaviness, not with crushing guilt, but with gratitude, with purpose, with a sense of honor he had forgotten how to feel. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for Lily, whose kindness changed lives even when she wasn't here to see it. One click is your way of saying, I felt this. Michael knelt and placed a drawer at the foot of her grave, letting it rest among the flowers Grace had brought. I'll continue what you started, he whispered. I promise. The wind carried his words gently away. He stood, holding Grace's hand in one of his, and offering the other to Elias. Together, they walked out of the cemetery, not as strangers, not as broken pieces, but as a beginning Lily had sketched long before any of them understood it. A family not defined by blood, but by love, by healing, by choosing each other. And as they stepped into the sunlight, Michael felt something inside him lift, quietly, powerfully, like a heart learning how to breathe again. Sometimes the people we lose leave behind more than memories. They leave invitations. Invitations to love again, to forgive again, to build again. And when we follow those invitations, we carry their light forward one act of kindness at a time.